audacious epigon, AUDACIOUS, pardon me. But this article is the rates of unsolved murders by states. Let me just give you this before we go a little deeper into the show. New reports based on FBI statistics show that somewhere between 35 to 40% of homicides in the U.S. go unsolved in the United States today. Uniform crime reporting data available at the state level, excluding Florida, show that right at 1/3 of homicide offenders remain racially unidentifiable. These unidentified killers are the ones who haven't been caught, which is why the law enforcement is uncertain of their racial composition. What we're talking about here, out of all the statistics out of all of the states for unsolved murders, again, the only state that the statistics and information is not available is the state of Florida. So this is real when we're talking about the case of Trayvon Martin and perhaps others who have been killed, and their cases remain open in the state of Florida as well. So you tune to the State of the City. Let me see if we can pull up this piece from Harry Belafonte, and it's not long, talking about, again, the issue of gun control and why we are not at the table and injecting ourselves into the conversation, not to talk about Alec, not to talk about stand your ground, because we're being killed in all 50 states. Not just being killed in states that have so-called Alec and stand your ground, but you're being killed up in the east, in the west, in the north, in the south, in the Midwest. So don't let anybody try to social engineer you into just talking about Alec and talking about stand your ground, because this is bigger than Alec and stand your ground. But they want to muddy the waters, or perhaps your president of the United States, along with Al Sharpton and others, would like to use that to tell you that this is what you should be focusing all your attention on. But again, as I asked Brother Mark from Anaheim on Carl Nelson's show, what laws have come out of the Atlanta child murders? What national laws were passed since the Atlanta child murders, since the death of Emmett Till, since the death of Latasha Harlan in Los Angeles, California, which many people have said that was the reason for the rebellions and the revolt, when a Korean woman shot that little girl in the back of the head, and the Korean woman got off even though the jury found her guilty because of a racist judge in California. But the state tried to focus the attention on Rodney King verdict, when for many it was about the death of a little black girl that was shot in the back of the head over some orange juice. But there's been so many other young people that we have lost throughout this country in terms of being shot down, and those who find themselves being victims of human trafficking, organ trafficking, and other types of trafficking that has not been addressed from the federal level and from the state level, except a few, with the exceptions of the Honorable Delegate Jill P. Carter and the introduction of Felicia Law. But what other laws have been passed to protect our children? We know of laws that has the names of white children that have been killed in this city and this state and in this country. But when it comes to black children, what laws? What Trayvon, Davons, Deshaun's? What laws for those who like to intellectualize this conversation? What laws have been passed? With all of the marching, with all of the protests, what laws have been passed? That's the question we're going to have to ask. And all of these things that we're seeing are inexplicably tied together, as the great Dr. King talked about. You can't have one without the other. You can't address one without addressing the other. You can't just talk about so-called stand your ground. Some of you seem to get an erection when somebody talks about that, without talking about the issue of the Second Amendment, without talking about the issue of the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, without talking about the issue of mass incarceration and mass detaining of black men and black children, without talking about stop and frisk, without talking about illegal arrests. All of that, as Tasty Cake would say, is all the good things wrapped in one. This is all the bad things wrapped in one. And if somebody tries to social engineer you and pigeonhole you into talking about one without talking about the issues of the others, such as the police brutality, and then when we bring it on home and expand the envelope, don't let your president, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, don't let your president, who don't have a moral leg to stand on right now, don't let the Lone Ranger or the Drone Ranger, who got the blood of children from Iraq to Libya to Palestine to Pakistan to Afghanistan, tell you about being profiled. Don't let him tell you and make you think that he's standing up for us and speaking for us, when he got too much blood on his hands of innocent children. See, if you're going to talk about violence and condemn violence, then damn it, you got to condemn violence in all its forms, whether it comes from the residents or the president. And that's what we have to force this country to grow up to address. Dr. King didn't just talk about the violence of the Negroes in the North without speaking to the violence of the greatest purveyor of violence in the world then in 68 and today in 2013, talking about the government of the United States. See, otherwise you should just sit down and be quiet because you really don't want to have an adult conversation. You want policy a la carte. I'll talk about violence against blacks, but I'm not going to talk about violence against those in Iraq. I'll talk about violence against our children, but not the violence against their children. See, that means you really don't want to grow up and mature. Christian, Muslim, Jew, Hebrew, whatever your title is. So you want to be selective. You want to turn a blind eye when it comes to the president killing children abroad, but you only want to address children being killed inside of the United States. All life has value. All life has value. So again, let me go to this clip of Harry Belafonte. Then we're going to come back and go a little deeper into the conversation, talking about, again, this issue of Trayvon Martin. 1 week now from the verdict. 1 week from a verdict which came out on a Saturday. And now, of course, we got marches happening on Saturday. A demonstration, a March, 50th anniversary of the March on Washington getting ready to go down on a Saturday. But this is after the NAACP refused to boycott the state of Florida, went down and had their convention. Went down, of course, this week when the verdict came out, the NAACP was there having a convention. What would King have done? What would Jesus have done? And now you have the National Association of Black Journalists. They got their convention getting ready to come up next week. Then you got the National Black Bar Association convention getting ready to take place. But they tell you the problem is those on the lowest socioeconomic realm that they're the ones that's holding the race back. Yet you get all of the black bourgeoisies. You get all of the talented 10th, as they say. That's going to be going down to have their conventions there. But yet they want you to follow them when you should say, no, I think this time around you should follow us because you clearly are not willing to make the kind of sacrifices that the masses are asking for. You listen to radio programs around this country, the masses are asking for a boycott. But the classes, the so-called classes or the asses, don't want you to boycott. Why is that? Have you noticed that? You get the classes, the ones up top, to say you shouldn't boycott. But had it been the Jewish community, would nobody in the Jewish community break rank and say it's not going to be a boycott? Had it been a gay young black man that was killed, the gay community wouldn't break rank. The Hispanic community wouldn't break rank. But those in our community think they can break rank and then tell you or try to beat you down to say you shouldn't even be talking about a boycott, except what the president tells you, except what Sharpton tells you, except what Morial tells you. And they don't practice what they preach themselves if you haven't figured that out by now. You got to wake up, sheep. You got to wake up and stop being their blind sheep, man, following them, and you don't even know where they're going. You don't even know where they're going. You don't know who the conductor is on the train. Let me go to this clip of Harry Belafonte talking about the issue of gun violence in this country, because I'm sure you're going to have many talking about Aurora, Colorado, probably ringing a bell as we speak. Then I'm going to come back in and talk about your president. It came out yesterday. Now, he didn't have a word to say about the affirmative action vote by the Supreme Court. Didn't have a word to say regarding the issue of affirmative action and the voting rights bill, which was voted down by the Supreme Court. Yet he comes out a day, if you haven't figured it out, day before Sharpton and the boys running around say they're having a march today at the closed federal building. The only person in there are the janitors and maybe a couple of security officers sleeping. Nothing to say about that, but he comes out a day before if you haven't figured it out by now. The games. Somebody got to be able to tell you. Somebody got to be able to show you, man. Have enough love to say this is nothing but a giant con game being played on our people to manipulate your hurt, your pain, your grief, your relief for some other plan that they want to push. And if I don't get into what that plan is today, I'll come back and get into that. But let me go to this clip of Harry Belafonte talking about the issue of gun control and violence and where are we in this conversation as a people. So listen to this message and we'll come back in and get into more of the state of the city.
Did you say almost a century? Wow. Let me start off by saying thank you to the NAACP and Angelus for the work you do and for the path you are forging for us in these troubled times. The group most devastated by America's obsession with the gun is African Americans. Although making comparisons can be dangerous, there are times when they must be noted. America has the largest prison population in the world. And of the over 2 million men, women, and children who make up the incarcerated, the overwhelming majority is black. They are the most unemployed, the most caught in the unjust systems of justice. And in the gun game, we are the most hunted. The river of blood that washes the streets of our nation flows mostly from the bodies of our black children. Yet, as the great debate emerges on the question of the gun, white America discusses the constitutional issue of ownership, while no one speaks of the consequences of our racial carnage. The question is, where is the raised voice of black America? Why are we mute? Where are our leaders, our legislators? Where is the church? Not all, but many have been the recipients of this distinguished award. Many were men and women who spoke up to remedy the ills of the nation. They were committed to radical thought. They were my mentors, my inspiration, my moral compass. Through them, I understood America's greatness. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Eleanor Roosevelt, and others like Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, Bobby Kennedy, Condi Rice, and perhaps most important of all for me, Paul Robeson. He was the sparrow. He was an artist who made us understand the depth of that calling when he said, "Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are civilization's radical voice." Never in the history of Black America has there ever been such a harvest of truly gifted and powerful artists as we witness today. Yet, our nation hungers for their radical song. Let us not sit back silently. Let us not be charged with patriotic treason. I thank my friend Sidney Poitier for stepping to the plate. I promise you, Sid, you'll never have to do this again. But my congratulations to all of those who are honored here tonight. And I will tell you that our kids, those who languish in the prisons of America, are waiting for us to change the system.
Welcome back. Of course, that was the great Harry Belafonte, a actor.